All right, welcome to the Fitfall podcast, where we chat about anything and everything sports tech related, whether that's sports watches, bike computers, bike trainers, train wraps, and anything that you can use to level up your health, fitness, and sports game.
We've got Des of Des Fit on YouTube, myself, Ray of DC Rainmaker on both DCRainmaker.com as well as on YouTube under DC Rainmaker. And as Ed mentioned, we're going to cover all sorts of sports tech gadgetry, everything from stuff that goes on bikes to drones to action cameras, you name it. We're going to cover it sometime along the way in this podcast.
And that kind of brings us up to what we're going to chat about today. So we've kind of got this enormous buffet of all these different topics we're going to talk about. So it's like one of those hotel buffets where you're going to see everything from Chinese food to Italian food to hot dogs for the kids and French fries and whatnot too. And all good stuff though. Yeah, all good stuff. So
I'm sure there's some amazing hot dogs in here.
So this is not related to hot dogs. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about the new Hammerhead Karoo quote unquote 3. Strava is announcing a whole bunch of new features that are coming up this summer. SRAM also has their new Red Groupset. Polar has some kind of rather interesting announcements as well. Zwift increases their price and the internet goes on fire again. And couple other things, like I tried the Saga HoloBike, and I also went to Bandcamp. So what do you think? What do you think we should start out with today?
You know what? Let's go HoloBike. I know it's last on our list, but I want to hear about this. I've only seen written stuff from people that, by their own admission, have not ridden a bike in years. So I want to hear what this dealio is here from you.
Okay, so the press release for the Saga HoloBike came out, I believe, around 3 weeks ago or so. And basically, this is a smart interactive bike that has a special display on it. So the display, what makes it special is that it's a stereoscopic display. So it actually shows two different images, one for each eyeball. And basically, this is creating a 3D effect without the need for actual 3D glasses. So what a video camera will see will be akin to what your normal eye would see of a 3D movie without the glasses. So you know how you see like kind of two different images there in a 3D movie without the glasses. That's basically what a video camera would see. But for the naked eye, it's basically the exact opposite. So the naked eye, you're seeing this exact 3D image come through because it's literally displaying two different images and one for each eyeball. It's really, really fascinating. So this is kind of expanding on the virtual cycling idea to kind of create a more immersive experience. And the engineer and the founder for this, he's done a lot on the Google side of things. So I think he was employed by Google for about 5-6 years in the AR and VR realms. And he's taking a lot of that knowledge to this bike. And it was really, really cool. The experience was really, really neat. So where they're at right now with it is that they've basically proven the display technology in the sense that the display is totally working. It absolutely works. It's really cool. There's actually a little camera on top, one for each eye, that actually tracks your eye movement as well. So it tracks your eye position. So if you shift a little bit over, it actually knows that. It'll actually shift the image for your eyes as well.
And is it happening fast enough in real time that
yes.
If you're just sprinting or something, it catches up?
Well, yes and no. So I would say that it's very reactive at the moment. So I would say that, if you shift your body position like this, more like this in that speed, it's reactive enough. But if you were to stand up and sprint, that's where everything kind of gets to be a little bit messy. Yeah. So what he's really aiming for is for cyclists to be able to pass the time a lot more naturally, I guess more organically than something like a Zwift or a Trainer Road or something like that, where he's really, he's trying to basically kind of make you forget about the fact that you're riding inside and you're kind of in this virtual world. And it's really cool. So he's using all the latest NVIDIA graphics cards and GPUs and all that kind of stuff. And he's actually processing this real world environment on the fly. So these aren't videos that you're actually seeing. So this is all video game technology where it's actually rendering all this stuff on the fly. And there's some really cool stuff that he actually built in terms of like tree branches. He'll purposely put those kind of like almost in frame where you feel you have to duck actually. It's really neat. So like I said, the display technology is proven at this point where it absolutely does work. There's certainly a lot of tweaks that need to happen in terms of responsiveness. So they're talking about possibly even putting like an accelerometer in the bike where it can actually feel the movement and whatnot to be able to react a little bit faster. And there's going to be higher refresh rates for the actual display as well eventually. So there's certainly stuff that they know that they need to do on that side of things.
Now, this is a Kickstarter project, correct?
This is a Kickstarter project, yeah. And at this point, last time I checked, they had a good $70,000 in backing already. But at the same time, we're talking about a $2,600, smart bike at this point. So, that's whatever. That's, that's not that many orders. But at the same time, that's quite a few orders, to be backing it at this point too.
So is there play here to make the bike long term? Obviously, that's what their Kickstarter goal is. But when you were with them, did you get the impression their play is to be in the indoor smart bike market or to license that whole situation to other companies to join them?
No, they are certainly looking at becoming a player in the indoor smart bike market. Yeah. So the one thing that they said about the whole technology. So one of my biggest questions to them was, why not just come out with a display that can be bolted on to any other smart bike? And it really comes down to needing the rider needs to be in a very specific position for the display to work because of the eye tracking technology and actually showing that display to the user. So that's why they're looking for the whole integrated package. Yeah.
So I'm pulling up the unit now. Did they mention and I've had some conversations with them, but they don't have a demo unit here in Europe. So I might go visit them here in a couple of weeks and go check it out. Looking at that bike though, it's got that big exposed flywheel, which reminds me a little bit of some of the designs that Be Cool had in the past many, many moons ago. Did they talk about if they've kind of OEM that design from someone else, or is that like their own home bake thing? Or
so that's a to be determined at this point. So what I was writing was, so they had basically three different. And I'll go ahead and overlay some B-roll now, but my video should be out right around the time this podcast comes out. Of my first impressions of this thing. So there were basically three different versions of it. There was their first version, which was literally like the Schwinn varsity road bike from way back in the day on a kicker core trainer with a small little display, just like, tiny proof of concept display. And that was like literally their first version. And it's hilarious. It's kind of like going from the, the Flintstones, like caveman vehicle all the way up to,
I see here. Yeah. If it went down far enough. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And then they also have their latest proof of concept, or not the proof of concept, but really it's the actual like physical bike and how it's supposed to look, the materials that they're going to use and whatnot. And then I was basically writing the in-between version of that. So the in-between version it's a pretty rough welded together sort of unit that looks...
That's a steel frame looking one, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that one, at the moment, like I said, the display technology is basically there. It's proven. But the resistance unit that I was riding was a static resistance unit. So it was just like set it at a static resistance. So they have not determined yet what they're going to be using for their automatic resistance. So this is going to be like any other smart bike where it will automatically control the resistance based on hills, so on and so forth. So that is a to be determined, and they don't know if they're going to OEM that or if they're going to come out with their own. However, looking at their timeline, OEM is probably the way that it has to go considering the timeline. So their timeline is very aggressive.
December 2024, it says.
Yeah,
is like tomorrow, basically. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that it's amazing where they've come in only, I can't remember, but it's literally only like a year and a half of development so far. So it's pretty amazing how far they've come so far. But at the same time, that's a long time considering, with manufacturing, it's like the final, what's the final production units, basically, they're supposed to be ready like a couple months really before anything actually launches.
Yeah. I look at those prototype frames that you rode, and I think like when I rode test frames like that for Wahoo and Tax and things like that, they were like 2 years out still at that point. Like at that stage. And that's for a company that actually knows how to make a indoor bike. Now, if they're bolting display on an OEM unit from pick your own, indoor smart bike manufacturer out of Asia or even out of the US potentially, that would definitely speed things up quite a bit.
Yeah, that's really my only concern, is that I think that, yeah, they're really going to have to look at how quickly they can actually get the smart bike portion of it rolling, because that seems aggressive overall. Yeah, the timeline.
Yeah. And I think for that, I would imagine like for that market, if you're right now, it's a $2,600 bike, which says it's $400 off for being an OG, original supporter. Like you're talking a $3,000, target price point, which means you're expected to compete with a kicker bike shift or something of that realm, right? In terms of functionality or the road feel of a Peloton Bike Plus would be another example, right? Or something in that same, like has a screen, has a bike. So yeah, they've got to deliver. I'm interested though. I'm interested to see your whole video on it. And how was that shooting that video? Like I just imagine mentally walking in that going, this is going to be a nightmare from like can you represent what you're seeing with your eyes on camera to actually complete the whole picture?
Actually, in a way, yes. So, in terms of like my back camera and just like the kind of surrounding cameras that I had, obviously that didn't really pick it up, but I was actually able to get the DJI Pocket 3 and put it right next to my eyeballs. And because it was right next to my eyeballs, the camera was actually showing that image as closely as possible, I guess you could say, for the camera right there. And you can see that stereoscopic image happen. And I actually was shifting a little bit too. So you can actually see the image shifting as well. So it's some pretty interesting footage overall. So yeah, I mean, there, surprisingly enough, I do actually have some footage that does show kind of some of the experience there. And yeah, and I don't know, the market, the type of consumer that they're aiming for, I think it's kind of interesting. So I don't think they're aiming for the Zwift rider. I don't think that they're aiming for a Peloton rider either. I think they're kind of aiming for someone who does want to ride quite a bit, but doesn't necessarily want like more of the training aspects of something like a Zwift or Trainer Road. May not necessarily want the social aspects either, but of like something like a Peloton, but more as like a gamer, I guess you could say that, kind of wants that immersive experience. And that part of it was really cool. And I could see it appealing for that audience. I don't necessarily see this, them pulling customers away from Zwift or anything like that either. I don't think it's going to be pulling away customers from Peloton either, but I think there's a specific market for it. I don't think they're looking to be, I don't think they're necessarily looking to be like leaders in the smart bike space by any means, but kind of like another option out there. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, it looks like they closed their funding goal or whatever, their Kickstarter on July 1st. So we got about a little over a month here until they close. So hopefully I'll be able to get a kick of it sometime in June and see a video here shortly.
Yeah, I'm eager to hear your impressions of it as well. Yeah.
Actually, just a quick note, Des, before we go on, we need to thank our sponsor for today's episode, which is Precision Fuel and Hydration. They've been a sponsor now for a while, and more importantly, a product I've been using myself as well as my wife's been using for a while in all of our training and racing. Of course, beyond us, you'll find them used by the top men's and women's Tour de France teams, as well as elite triathletes, runners, and other sports like NBA, the NFL, and Major League Baseball. One of the cool things about Precision is they have an athlete support crew, so basically a group of people that you can contact and actually have a video conference call about your particular upcoming race or event or whatever it may be that you're training for, and they'll spend like 15 or 20 minutes with you figuring out your actual nutrition strategy using their products. I did this recently for my epic 3-day hike across an island in the middle of the ocean, and it was really useful just to kind of think outside the box a little bit what I normally do for my other races like half iron distances or marathons or things like that. But of course, if you don't like talking to people, you can also use their free fuel and hydration planner on their website. It allows you to basically do kind of those same sort of things and get a rough idea of what you need from a fueling standpoint. Note that all the products are Informed Sports certified. They're vegan, they're 2-to-1 glucose, fructose, it contain no artificial ingredients, and most importantly, as I keep pointing out, they're like totally edible. I consume them without any problems. They don't taste too bad at all. Note that you can get 15% off your first order with coupon code FITFILE and link down the description there. Thanks again to Precision Fuel and Hydration for being today's sponsor.
So next up, what should we talk about next? So should we talk about Strava or Karoo?
Let's go Strava.
Let's go Strava. Okay, so
we could that way the Karoo 3 could be the third thing we talk about. Get it?
Oh, there you go. Yeah. No, well, it's the new one. All right. So Strava has just announced a slate of new features that are coming up this summer. So they actually announced it at the Camp Strava event, which I just attended last week. So I guess we'll just quickly go to Camp Strava really quick and tell you guys what that's all about. So Camp Strava is it's kind of like this invite only event. There's like 350 people invited to this event. So this involves different brands like, Apple, Garmin, TrainerRoad, Zwift, all these different companies that do integrate with Strava. There's different media and press, and then there's like different influencers and stuff like that too. So it's a fun event because it gets a lot of different industry leaders in the space at one event, and it kind of reminded me of the Ant Plus Symposium in a way that, it was, Strava, in the whole scheme of things, Strava is a very agnostic brand out there where, they work with almost everyone out there. And so they just kind of are bringing a lot of people together, and a lot of these people basically want to share ideas on how to, grow the Strava community, how they can actually use Strava to leverage Strava to increase their brand awareness or their influencer awareness. It was a really good time. Yeah,
cool. But you spoke there. You moderated a panel. What exactly did you?
Yeah, I moderated.
What was your deal?
What do you do here? So I moderated a panel on device-powered inspiration and where to find it. And the different people on the panel were representatives from Garmin, Aura, and Fi, the smart dog collar company. So that's the smart dog collar that just came out, I believe, or announced about 3 months ago, that integrates with Strava, where you can actually go walk your dog, and it'll actually do a group activity on Strava for that. So
on behalf of your dog.
Yeah, exactly. So I assume Lucy does not have a Fi dog collar at this point.
Lucy does not have a Fi dog collar. Lucy doesn't even like walking. Let's be honest. You know that, right? Lucy likes to sit there and do nothing.
I was going to say the GPS track on that's just going to be up and back in the yard.
Imagine though getting your dog beating you on a segment, right? Like can your dog be ahead of you on the leaderboard? How does this work?
Oh,
I have questions.
They're actually this is a whole different rabbit hole that I will let you go down that rabbit hole as you wish. But I think it's a very, very interesting product that does encourage you sharing that, I guess, aspect of your fitness and health life. But yeah, it was a good panel just because it was a nice mix of two different wearable manufacturers that are certainly leaders in the space in that realm. And we talked about different metrics like HRV and recovery, and what kinds of features that they have that actually encourage people to get out and kind of promote fitness and health. And it was a fun little panel though. Yeah, I kind of blacked out because it was like a whole bunch of lights and they were like live streaming the thing, and it was a good time. Yeah,
I heard you did well. I had my plants in the audience. They said you did well, so it's all good.
And so, the recording is not going to be actually available on Strava's YouTube channel until next week. But I did get people come up to me and say good job. I hope that's not because I just did such a terrible job that they just wanted to. They're like, oh,
the
dear.
pity compliments.
No, you did a good job. Oh, no, it was a good time though, and it was great to very much connect with lots of different brands out there. Got to make a lot of connections, and just chat about what kind of makes their products tick and stuff like that.
And is that the chart that we discussed where the insight level increases as the night goes on? So like there's a plot on one end, beer consumption, and like insightfulness increases the more beers. Like that's the the way this works every time. Oh
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was definitely no shortage of alcohol there for sure. Yeah, but I don't know. Like at the same time, like they still had a 6 a.m. run and a hike. So it's like you had to keep your bleep together for the most part.
This was the first time though that we saw really the Strava CEO in public, the new CEO, right?
The new CEO, yes.
Yep. The new CEO was announced last December after the previous CEO and founder announced about a year ago now that he was stepping down, spend more time with his family. And so they spent 8 months finding someone that would agree to lead Strava going forward. When they found that person in December, and then he started, January 1st, I think, roughly thereabouts. But this is the first time we've seen him on stage. And I will say, from watching his little snippet, I was impressed with that whole video thing they did, that 84-second video announcing dark mode. I think was a good example of one, just owning their fumbles and owning that. Was impressed.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't obviously anything more in action beyond that, but I'm willing to give him a shot. As I said when they announced his name back in December, January, I'm happy to give any person their first go with things. And thus far, good job, especially with that and all the other things they announced.
Yeah, no, and I met him and chatted with him a little bit, and I mean, he definitely seems very charged with his position for sure, and I feel like he's being a really good leader. I mean, considering the people around him and how the people around him kind of view his position, I think he's very well respected at this point, and I think that we have seen things come out very quickly, and we have seen a very accelerated feature release over at least the last 6 months plus, I would even say. So I'm not sure necessarily how many of things were already into play before he even took the CEO role, but at the same time, I think that they have been announcing a lot of stuff, and I think this announcement was interesting as well, right? Because it wasn't just saying those features land today. We're actually, they are actually saying, here's our roadmap for the next 3 months. Sure. Yeah. And that roadmap, so basically they announced a new dark mode for the app. So that's been kind of nice especially for people who have native dark mode on their device. They also have athlete intelligence, which is going to be like an AI type of feature. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. There's also night heat maps, weekly heat maps. There's some new privacy controls. There's new verified segments. And then they actually even have a new family plan pricing for up to 4 people, which I thought that was kind of interesting, considering it's not even your immediate family. You can actually just have a group of friends or something like that, and you can get a discount on your Strava subscription.
It's hilariously flexible. I will give them crap, first of all, for not knowing what the price is, right? How do you announce it but not know the prices? But whatever. Yeah. Setting that aside for a second, they made an entire FAQ page, right? So they actually, to their credit, didn't just say, hey, it's a family and friends and family plan, and more details later. They have an entire massive FAQ page about all the nuance of this, except the price. But yeah, it's literally up to 4 of your friends, right? So 5 people total or 4 people total? I can't remember.
I thought it was up to 4 people. Yeah, up to 4 people total. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 people total. But the kicker is they don't have to be in your household. They don't have to even be in your city. They just have to be in your country. That is it.
Country.
Right? You can literally blend people anywhere. I know some Europeans are upset about this because they're like, oh, I got friends across the border in Germany and whatever the case is. I would argue that I can't think of a single other company out there that offers a family plan that even allows family outside of your household, let alone any friend down the street, let alone any friend down the city, country, etc. So
totally,
this seems pretty reasonable. It also seems like people are going to game the crap out of this. I don't understand how Strava's not going to lose their shirt. You just imagine all your ride buddies. Now, if it wasn't me, you, and Shane being on 3 different countries, we would absolutely just share one Strava account. But I can imagine I've got friends that are not currently Strava premium subscribers. I don't like Bobby, as my wife isn't either at the moment. And that kind of go in and out. One of our friends, another couple, go in and out of being Strava premium, basically just for the summer because they want to do hiking and stuff and the routing there. But the rest of the year they find no benefit of it. So that's a scenario we could just share with them and be done with it, right? And yeah, I don't understand how their Strava's not going to lose money here.
My thinking is that it's actually going to loop more free users into being subscribers for a longer term. That's, I think that's the end game in my mind.
I agree with that in theory. My concern, if you will, on behalf of Strava, is that it's going to be basically you have a friend, one person that goes, hey, dudes, I'll hook you guys up, and just designates their 3 buddies that they ride with as premium members, right? So they're not really converting people to paying per se. I mean, there's an incremental amount. There's some small amount that'll be, because we don't know what the pricing is yet.
Exactly.
You can't right now. You cannot join a group if you're already an existing subscriber. You have to cancel first.
Yes.
Which is fine if you're a monthly membership, because then you're canceling and you're joining an annual, because the Strava family plan is only an annual subscription. So that makes sense from a business standpoint, because it basically solidifies our income for a year at a time. But if you're already a paid annual member, which hopefully you are if you're doing Strava for long term, because it saves you a whole ton of money, then you're basically going to have to like cancel and then wait, up to however long the rest of your term is, etc. It'll be really interesting to see their pricing. I think that's probably the big takeaway here is their pricing going to be like, oh, that's a really good deal? Is it going to be like, no, that's a pain in the butt, 'cause now I got to like PayPal, Tiki, whatever my friends, or whatever the Venmo, etc., to split up the money? Like, not worth it. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true, that the pricing really isn't revealed yet. So, it could be like you get 10% off, and people are gonna be like, or if you get 50% off, that's gonna be like super appealing at that point.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think it has to be enough for people go, oh yeah, that's solid, and then Strava gets that little bit extra that they would have never got, right? Like my friends that are not going to otherwise sign up be a premium subscriber, that they're going to get that little bit extra because, yeah, sure, we'll all split it together and it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, though, like talking about your friends who may subscribe for, let's say, 3 to 4 months. So let's say even if it's a 50% discount, just throwing that out there, they would be able to lock that person in for the entire year at 50%, which would be theoretically more than, somebody just doing it for 3 months. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, again, that yearly lock is probably that's probably the key to how making this all work for Strava's favor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think also how closely they align to existing family plans across the digital realm, right? Like if you think about existing family plans tend to be relatively incremental amounts to add someone else in your household, etc. So is it going to be like that, or is it going to be, who knows, off the side? So next feature though, so we talked family plans. We're going to talk, because we talked dark mode. That's pretty self-explanatory. It's dark.
I think the funniest thing about dark mode really was Mike Martin's Instagram story or reel or video that he did on it. And I'm so glad that you highlighted that in your YouTube video, because it was, when I saw that, I'm like, wow, that was amazing.
That was super well done. Like the second I watched that, I said to Bobby, I'm like, I've got to go film a video because this is amazing, right? Like this is one of those, like, God, this is I'm just impressed with them doing that, right? I can see how that could get vetoed a lot of ways. And I'm impressed that it ultimately does take the right leader to come in and go, yeah, we're gonna make fun of ourselves and hopefully deliver on that and pick some pretty damning but really spot on quotes, right? All those quotes that they featured there, especially the one about being so slow, right? Like that is the most spot on, I think, feeling for a lot of people and Strava's development over the years. And of course, we don't know whether or not that development has been because of leadership slowing down projects or because of developers slowing. Like there's always two sides to that coin. It's very easy for the general public to say, their developers are bad. But my opinion, or not in my opinion, my experience talking with Strava developers, they're all smart people. It's often been like those upper layers that have slowed things down and getting out the door.
So coming from going back to the UI and UX experience background, is that I would actually say that a lot of dark mode, from me playing around with it, I would attest like the slowness to be due to a lot of intricacies with making different icons inverted, in terms of like, different colors and stuff like that. Because, just going through the interface, I'm just looking at all the differences, and from a graphic design standpoint, there's a lot there to switch around. So, dark mode isn't just like a flipping the switch thing for everyone out there. There's a lot of decisions that actually need to be made to, adhere to, best practices for color contrast, just general look and feel. There's a lot of stuff there. So, but, I'm glad to see it at this point. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Imagine every single chart, every single graph, every single overlay that has potentially permanent content in it has to be dealt with in some way, shape, or form. I think it's a lot more than people want to. Again, it's easy on the internet to kind of sit there and go, it's a switch in the settings, and it's really not in real life.
Yep,
So
exactly.
cool.
Yeah.
We've got
So
on the Strava, so we haven't talked about night heat maps yet. So just to context for people what this is, Strava is going to have new heat maps that are going to be showing where people go at night. So in particular, between sunset and sunrise. So it's going to vary throughout the year, of course. So it's not like a set time, which makes sense. And the idea is it's under the built for her, build for all, or build for many, something like the exact tagline.
built for her. Built for her, yeah.
Yep. And then, so it's things that were designed to be kind of women first, but also applicable to everyone. And so this is one that's focused on women's safety and how can they find places that are safer to run, with the idea being that more people are running there, it's going to be safer in some way, shape, or form. I know lots of people like to kind of nitpick with that, but I think we all agree that generally speaking, if there's a lot of runners running somewhere, that's probably the safest place as opposed to a place that has no heat on the heat map, right? Pretty straightforward. That said, for me, actually, like running around Amsterdam, there's nowhere that I know of that I cannot run at night. I mean, maybe might follow a canal or something, but like there's nothing like safety-wise here. But what's fascinating, I think, though, is that could be interesting to highlight routes that I might not otherwise know to run at night, right? Like for me, I've got my routes that I run at night. The same thing, because that's just where I've figured out is like a lit path or, efficient, whatever the case is. I love to look at some of these things at night and go, oh, wow, I didn't know that was a popular area to run at night. I'll go check that out instead. And so just like some of the, automated routing stuff they do today, I find that really valuable to go and find new places that I haven't run or ridden before.
Yeah, totally. And along with the built for her features, there's going to be some new privacy controls too. Like you can actually hide your start time now, or you'll eventually be able to hide your start time, and a whole bunch of other different things, which I think are just really, really, really smart. Obviously, with a lot of the information that you're putting out there, unfortunately, there's some bad actors. So I really do appreciate some of those more fine-tuned controls for privacy as well. But going back to the heat maps
and
thing,
the start time one is funny because that's something that, again, was built for her, right? Being that hiding time, so you don't really know when someone's running exactly, but it's also applicable to everyone because that's how people want to hide when they run during the middle of the workday, right? That's one of those, like, everyone's like, this is the most useful feature. They want to be able to hide that so their boss doesn't know that they're in the middle of something, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, just to put it out there, though, there are tools out there where you can adjust your start time, by the way, for your files. It's a lot more manual thing, but there are some tools out there if you want to do that right now, just to put it out there. But
fitfiletools.com, right? I think does that.
Fitfile tools, absolutely. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff you can do there, such as, I don't know, hiding a device name, stuff like that.
Yeah, you could do field stripper, file combiner, time adjuster, power adjuster, section remover, device charger, corrupt time fixer, and peak remover. So in case you have bad power data, etc. And just a minor disclosure there, the fitfiletools.com is written by the same developer that helps write the DCR analyzer. I don't have any affiliation in the fitfiletools.com thing. It's totally free for everyone. But that is a super cool site. And but behind the scenes, a lot of the same tech runs the analyzer that I do.
And then one more thing on the heat map side of things, which I thought was really cool, was a weekly heat maps feature as well. So this will help you basically kind of look at a particular area, and let's say, right now it's May in Colorado, where some of the high country we're in kind of like this in limbo phase of like some trails are good to go in terms of like snow cover, some aren't. And so this weekly heat maps feature will help you kind of decide whether maybe this trail is going to be good to go to actually get run during this particular time of year or not. And I assume there's probably a lot of other uses for this type of feature too.
So is that tied to this week in history, or is that tied to the last 7 days?
So I'm not exactly sure on that. I'm going to assume both, but don't quote me on that at this point.
I'll do some digging.
Yeah, that feature is not, from what I see.
It's not
so let's
listed
see.
in the PR stuff. No. The reason why I asked that is because you imagine a scenario. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, it is actually. So weekly heat maps keep up to date with changing route conditions. With the help of the Strava community, the platform can show what roads, trails are most trafficked in the past 7 days then.
So that's exactly the scenario you described. I was reading a thread today about the Stelvio, right, which the Giro is supposed to go up here shortly. But the upper 300 meters of ascent, not the 300 meters in distance, but the upper 300 meters of that climb, is currently still solidly snowpacked. So the road's cleared all the way to the top there. but the person was trying to figure out whether or not the road was clear at all, other people, until finally someone dropped in the threads like, yeah, I rode it this morning. Here's where you, as far as you can go. Like that feature is incredibly useful for that, because otherwise, if you look at a heat map of Stelvio, it's just going to be like flaming, bright, always open, right? But in reality,
Exactly.
it's still snow, a lot of snow.
Yeah. No, I'm really stoked about that feature, especially I think in springtime and then even in fall as well, when, conditions start to get spicy, but sometimes could be completely dry. I think it's a fantastic feature. Yep. So again, like definitely adding a lot of value there. So I think the last one, should we talk about the AI thing? Have you played around with that at all?
Which one? The athlete intelligence one or the cheat reduction one?
Athlete intelligence, which the cheat reduction is really cool too. We should talk about that. But
I have not played with the athlete intelligence, no.
Okay, so the athlete intelligence, it's spitting out a couple sentences about your workout. Like, all right, so, like my most recent workout yesterday was, it was a good steady state workout where I was hitting some good heart rate zones for a sustained amount of time. And that's literally like what the AI is going to be saying right there. I mean, it's basically summarizing your stats and the type of workout that it had in a conversational manner. Now, there's some funny stuff about it, though, that I've kind of noticed. And this is all beta at this point. So, all this stuff can change. But it was kind of funny. So I had a pretty adventurous, like nearly type 2 type mountain bike ride on Saturday. And, in my title, I said, stuff like dodging rain, trees, and cows with, plenty of spicy conditions, plenty of adventuring involved. And the actual description that it gave to me there was literally like cherry picking a lot of those words and just saying, you had a very adventurous ride, dodging trees, cows, and weather. And so it was regurgitating a lot of that information in some other sentences, basically another way to put it. So the problem that I find with this athlete intelligence AI, at least where it sits at the moment, is that I can see this working for training plan apps like FastCat. So FastCat has their AI, type thing. So it's more that, yes, you can give a summary of what kind of workout this was and the outcome of it, but, putting it in context though, there's really not much context to it, because it's like, all right, so if you have like a terrible workout, it doesn't really know what you're aiming for versus what you actually did. So, that's where I think the athlete or, something like a FastCat that's aligned with a training plan, the AI type thing is more useful in that sort of scenario.
Right. Sort of this historical problem we have with any of the platforms that spit out recommendations but don't know what your goal is, right? And if you don't know what the goal is, then everything will look great, or everything will pretty much look great all the time, because you just assume that you completed it, right? That's the end game there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see that matured. And then there's of course the AI anti-cheating stuff. Is this actually AI? Like, I feel like a lot of us sat back and went like, how hard is it to filter out, plane flights from a Strava segment, right? Like, I've literally had like that kind of stuff pop up in segments that you're like, well, that's not real. That's still there.
Well, I don't know. I could see this certainly coming into play with e-bikes versus normal bikes, though, because there's been, to be honest with you, there's somebody around my town that has just been classifying their e-bike rides as rides. And here's the thing. At the same time, maybe they don't necessarily know the difference, between the two. So it's not, I'm not saying it's like a purposeful thing by any means, but, it's like their segment time on a 5-minute segment will be, for a 5-minute segment for like my time would be like 3 minutes. You're like, okay, well, that's certainly an e-bike at that point. And they're reaching 40 miles an hour going uphill. So that's that. So yeah, I could certainly see it coming into play with something like that for the intelligence side of things.
Overall, I'd say I'm intrigued with all these updates. I'm curious to see where it goes. I'm curious to see, I think, really the pricing of the family side of it. That to me is like almost the most tangibly defining thing of like, is this a new Strava Leaf or not, right? Like, I feel like the other pieces are all pieces that we may have seen under the previous leadership in terms of features that they're, keep release cadence. But I feel like the family plan is what people have been asking for so long that it's like, okay, well, we see this be meaningfully different.
I think the ultimate goal is obviously to bring in more Strava revenue, but at the same time, it's building a bigger active community, which is really their slogan. That's really what they're trying to do. So, I think it goes along with all that stuff. So, yeah.
So
Yeah.
number 3 on the list, we have the Karoo, not 3. The new Karoo.
Not the new Karoo. Yeah. So yeah, anyways, the new Karoo. So this has been in the works for like the last 2 years since SRAM acquired Hammerhead? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's 2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's mainly just new hardware, right? I mean, it's like, because software under the covers is just like the Karoo 2, but there's some very welcome changes to the hardware.
Yeah, so it's mainly new hardware. There are a handful of small user interface changes that won't be coming to the Karoo 2, but as a general rule of thumb, Hammerhead is by far the most frequent updater of their software across the entire sports tech segment. I can't think of any company that is basically on a 2-week release cadence with real features. We're not talking like just here's some bug fixes. We're talking legitimate new features every 2 weeks for a couple years now. So this isn't like some, candy fuel kick for a couple months here. This is talking years of this stuff. So the Karoo 3 is really about updating the hardware to keep that release cadence going forward. And so there's a couple of big ticket items. Number 1 is they've increased the display brightness quite a bit, significantly in fact, making it more visible primarily in bright sunny conditions. It was never really a problem like in overcast dark conditions, but it was at bright sunny conditions. They've changed the top layer of the screen to make it more clear. They've increased the battery life by increasing the battery size. So they're claiming upwards of 15 hours now, which is in the ballpark of what my testing, maybe a smidge, below that, like I'm in the 13ish or so hour range. But again, there's lots of variables that affect battery life. So most notably display brightness. In my case, I had it about 40%. So you could bring it down to 10 or 15%. And for that unit, display brightness is by far the biggest driver of battery life. They added a new power button. So it's something that I was pretty happy to see. I think I've always found that the Karoo 2 was a bit perplexing when you kind of went back to it as to which buttons did which things, and you're like, I just want to do what I want to do and I can't figure it out. And this made it really clear to like, this is a power button for turning it on and off, and then everything else has like virtual buttons. Still would have liked to see some etching on those buttons, like what is your dedicated lap button, start button, stop button, etc. Because that's today they're just blanket. But they also improved the buttons, which does help quite a bit. They made them crispier by their own definition, which means they made the edges sharper, so they're easier to use with gloves.
And supposedly it was supposed to be a little bit faster. It was like, marginally faster. I mean,
marginally.
Marginally, like I said. I mean, it was like, there were
margins of the margin.
There you go, exactly. But they really did listen to a lot of the feedback, because there was even like a port cover for the USB-C port at this point too. So, that keeps out a lot of the same things. Unfortunately, it's still using the same mounting system as before, but they do at least have a stronger mount for it. So hopefully people will experience less breakage if you use that mount. But at the same time, I feel it's like, I think it's so awesome that they actually do include a Garmin quarter turn adapter inside the box. I mean, that's a great move.
So awesome.
Yeah, that's absolutely a great move.
It makes a ton of sense. And also they added multi-band or dual frequency GPS.
Oh yeah,
to
I guess
well.
so. Yeah.
So that one's there as well. And they increased the most notable thing, they increased the loudness level of the chirp. Substantially.
Holy balls. That thing. So the first time I heard it actually was on an indoor ride. So I'm just pedaling along, starting to warm up, and this thing pops on by default, and oh my gosh, like it scared the living bejesus out of me. Like that thing is so loud.
It was so loud. It's funny because I went to like a media event back months ago, and there was a bunch of, I don't know, like 10 or 15 media people there, and I paid for the whole like travel, all that stuff myself, and went there and we rode around the mountains for a few days. And I've never heard so many cycling journalists get so annoyed so quickly. Because you imagine a group of 10 people, and we all had routes loaded. So the way these events work, they send you the routes ahead of time, and you just add them to your accounts. So they send us, these links, and they just add them to our Hammerhead accounts. And so everyone had the routes loaded. So as you got approaching turns, and now you got 10 to 15, like, FU loud beeps from all these bikes at once, repeatedly, for all sorts of different things. It was vibrant. But the thing is, though, like, you have to understand that Karoo has this long, hilarious history with the beeper, right? The original Karoo didn't have a beeper at all. It had no noises. And then the Karoo 2 had one, but people were like, it's a bit quiet at first. And like the very first prototype they gave me, it was like, I could barely hear it because of a manufacturing error, but that was what I had to go with for my hands-on thing, because the beeper was blocked by some plastic on the first prototypes. And so it was like, you gave me a beeper, but it sounded like a whisper. And then they fixed it for the Karoo 2 itself, the production run, and it was like, okay, this is fine. And then, but people still kind of said it was maybe a bit soft. And then they came now this time and they're like, we're going to give you a semi-truck air horn, right? Like it's, and you can't change it, right? You can't change the loudness level. It's just simply is what it is.
I hope that can be changed in software, because it's basically on or off. You can't adjust the
for volume. Right now from a user standpoint.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I think the other really useful feature was the app integration now. So they actually have a new companion app for it as well. And this is just going to be an easy way for you to sync routes and workouts to your Karoo. But I think one of the coolest features that I played around with was the native map sharing with the app for like a route on the fly. And I'm not sure if I have the exact naming correct there, but basically what you can do is you can use Google Maps or Apple Maps, and you can basically choose a location there, and you can just share that directly with the Hammerhead companion app, and it syncs to your Hammerhead device like that. I mean, it is instantaneous, and then it does on-the-fly navigation to that location. That worked beautifully for me, and it kind of loops back to that the Chorus. What's their new name? Extender feature.
Extender. Yeah, Extender. That's the screen mirroring. Chorus is, by the way, if you remember back a month ago, we talked about Chorus' new screen mirroring feature, but they didn't have a name for it yet. Just like Apple didn't have a name for it and just kind of like try to skirt around it. Chorus has a name for folks. It's called the Extender.
Cue memes now.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. They were like, we shall not call it screen mirroring. What are we gonna call it, boss? I don't know. Pick something from the dictionary randomly.
I did have many conversations with Chorus about their feature and the naming for it, and I thought of extension. That's the first thing that came out. But Extender, they did kind of ask my opinion of that, and I was like, they were
freestyling.
They didn't listen to me on it. So anyways, but that feature is really, really useful on the new Karoo 3, just because, again, if you are going to be looking for like a specific point of interest, like a bakery or a brewery, you're gonna whip out your phone and do that, and it just made it so convenient to be able to just route it on the fly. Love that for sure. Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, though, this new companion app is not supposedly compatible with the Karoo 2. And I say supposedly because someone uploaded a YouTube video, a small channel uploaded a YouTube video that shows them sending that exact scenario there of sending the coordinates, or they sent a GPX file, to the Karoo 2, and it worked. And there were some little quirks with, like, they had to be on the home screen for it to work, etc. But it's one of those, like, there's some legitimate questions for Hammerhead of why is this, if someone on day one can make this somewhat work, why can't Hammerhead make this somewhat work as well?
Yeah, I don't understand. I guess I don't necessarily understand the intricacies of Bluetooth in terms of like how those connect and whatnot. Maybe there's like some sort of different protocol there, but I would think that it should work. But that's just me, I don't really know.
Yeah, that's where it's weird. Again, it's like bringing up the Karoo history bus here for a second, because if we went back to the Karoo 0, which was a Kickstarter project, right, and the Karoo 1, that was a kind of a known gap there that they were like, okay, we're going to solve this down the road in firmware updates for the Karoo 1. Never happened. And then when they announced the Karoo 2, it was, okay, we are definitely going to have a companion app, and it's going to do all the things that you love and would dream of in the world. And eventually they did get a companion app, but only for smartphone notifications. That was it. Like, it would just send those through. It's basically just a tunnel from your phone to the Karoo to be able to see notifications, but nothing else. No ride uploads, nothing like that. So if you're not in the Hammerhead ecosystem, you may not be aware that up until now, you had to be within Wi-Fi range to upload your rides, right? So if you were staying at a hotel somewhere or somewhere that didn't have that, like, that could be really tricky. Or you had to have the SIM card in there, which the new Karoo 3 does get rid of the SIM card slot. They said less than 5% of the people use the SIM card. I think I know some people are upset about that, but I think that is probably a fair trade-off. It's more than just a SIM card. It's having an antenna designed for that. It's having all the certification for that. Like, adding cellular connectivity device is a massive headache that for less than 5% of your users, even within that, I'm guessing a lot of them would have been just fine using a phone paired to it. So now you're down to like a fraction of a percent. Setting that all aside, I don't get why though. Like, now we're in Karoo 3 and it's like, okay, now we got the companion app, but wait, what happened to Karoo 2? This was like a kind of a promised thing from the beginning. So hopefully Hammerhead can figure this out, at least some of the basic features. I don't think anyone's asking for everything, but if I can sync a ride and sync a route, that would be like happy camp land for the Karoo 2.
That was really probably the primary reason I shied away from using a Karoo 2 was I couldn't upload a ride just automatically via my phone. Like, it was just such a pain in the butt, like in terms of like having to get onto Wi-Fi or some little hoop that you had to jump through to just literally upload your ride, which is like what every other device does on the fly. That was one of my biggest roadblocks with the Karoo 2. So I don't know. I do like the Karoo 3 quite a bit from the new hardware standpoint. There were, my other gripes from the hardware standpoint was the readability in direct sunlight was kind of challenging for me with the Karoo 2, where I really had to crank up the brightness. So the new cover glass and the display, that certainly helps quite a bit. The better buttons, that's like chef's kiss on those. So I think it's a good device. I don't know if it's necessarily a reason to upgrade from the Karoo 2, especially I guess if they figure out the companion app thing, which would make it less of a reason, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think it's overall it's a good little upgrade for them. I will say or note though that they did increase the price quite a bit. So it goes from what was $399 now to $475, basically $474 technically.
Yep.
And so that is definitely a bump, and I think that's something can be challenging when you have companies like Garmin putting the Edge 1040 on sale for $499 and the Edge 840 on sale for $399 and $299. Like, that's where it's tricky, and obviously that's not going to happen all year round. Or it might, right? Like that's sort of it's the same problem that we talked about in the past, maybe before this podcast, around the Coros Pace 3 when they raised the price to $229, and then Garmin comes along and puts the Forerunner 255 on sale for $249, and people are like, yeah, $20 more, sure, right? I'll pay that, right? And that's where I did find it funny that Garmin set these things on sale basically the day these released, right? Like, it was all and those sales are planned for a long time. Like, just to be clear here, this Garmin isn't like going, oh, they just announced this today, I'll pull this lever, right? They're planned months out with retailers, like they have printed stuff going out. But it's notable that they seem to know when to put things on sale to make other companies, just like with their Epix and Phoenix sales, right? I mean, down to $449 right now for the Phoenix 7, and $499 for the Epix. In light of Polar and the Grid X2 Pro coming out, it's $750, and the Coros Vertex 2S at $699, right? That's just
that's a challenge.
They just pulling the levers to cause mayhem. I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Now, along with the Karoo 3, SRAM also announced the new SRAM Red Groupset. So I did not actually get a chance to try it myself. So what were your impressions of the new Red Groupset?
It's nice. So the biggest thing you're going to see on the new Red Groupset, that's probably most tangible, is frankly the new bonus button. So that's a button on the inside of the shifters, that allows you to go ahead and perform extra actions. And so by default, that little bonus button will just simply shift just like the rest of your shifters. But you can also tie it into both Hammerhead functions as well as Wahoo functions, and coming shortly, Garmin functions too. So SRAM announced that Garmin's getting that same functionality here. And then with that, they also announced that the access blips can be set as AMP Plus remote shifters too. So it's all about the integration. So on the Hammerhead side, there is a massive list of things that you can choose that bonus button to trigger. Like, it's not just changing the data pages. It's starting and stopping workouts. It's there's 30 or 40 items in that list. I got tired of scrolling through them all. It's really, really well done there on their side, but also Wahoo, it's much the same thing. Like, you can choose from a bunch of different actions, very similar to how it would be on Shimano with Di2, and having those controls, those hidden buttons control things on different units. Beyond that, there's changes from like a braking lever standpoint and the amount of force that you need to get the same amount of braking force. So it's not increasing the overall braking force of the calipers, but the amount that you need like from a pinky finger to get that is there. The thing is, like I said in my review, and there's also new power meter, well, not new power meter, there's an updated version of power meter where they removed the Quark logo, but it's still the exact same technical specs inside of it. And then, of course, beyond that is just a bunch of weight saving things and all that stuff. In many ways, if you are already on some of the SRAM's top-end group sets or newer group sets, you're probably going to find this very similar. In theory, this is shifting faster. They said they've changed some algorithm bits to shift a little bit faster. I've got some testing coming up on that. But the thing is, like at this point in time, these group sets are shifting so fast that it doesn't matter. Like, and one of the things that SRAM kind of noted in their presentations is like, I think they said they swept all 3 Grand Tours on both the men's and the women's side last year on the group sets, right? So like any talk that, oh, it's not fast enough and the pros aren't like, I mean, I don't subscribe to the theory that, the equipment makes those top end pros. Those pros can do it on pretty much any equipment, but this demonstrates that like, if it's good enough for those top teams to win across both the men's and the women's side, across all 3 Grand Tours, like, it doesn't matter. I'd also argue, though, like I've been riding as well the gravel group set that released whenever it was, Explorer, right? And that was also equally fast to me. Like someone asked me, because the bike I'm riding is the Specialized Roubaix SL something, right? It's the bike that I have right now alone is a $15,000 bike when all is said and done, right? And to me, I'm like, as you know, like from riding with me, I'm like, it's a bike. It pedals, it rolled, it stopped when I wanted to stop. It went up a hill. Like, I guess I'm not a bike tech person. I'm not a bike person. I am a tech person, unless like I want stuff to transmit and communicate and stuff like that. So I don't feel like an appreciable difference between the Explorer group set that is essentially the same thing with different materials from a weight standpoint to Red AXS. Like it's just, they're both really damn fast. Like it's a simple set.
No, totally. I think I have the Force Explorer group set that came out last year or something like that on my gravel bike, and I can't see a reason for it need to be any faster. I mean, it's a beautiful group set. So with group sets nowadays, I think we're kind of getting to the point where you may just have to like skip generations to really see any notable difference with these sort of things. And with plenty of other types of technology out there too. It's like I'm still using a 13 Pro iPhone because it's a great phone, so, and I didn't even choose to go to the 15, but 16, we'll have to see. So maybe same thing with a Red group set. Yeah.
My 13 Pro is really upset lately, by the way. It's substantially upset about life. The battery is down to like the warning zone of like only can charge 77%, but more
77. Oh my God.
Yeah. More importantly though, is I can't even charge it anymore. Like I have to wirelessly charge most of the day because the contacts, due to perhaps all my saltwater immersions over the last 3 years, are really upset. So I have to find the cable in just the right wiggle moment. Like this morning I woke up, it was totally dead because when I put it to bed last night, it wasn't on the wireless charger, stupidly. And so it wasn't in the right wiggle spot and it just died because it only has 77% potential capacity. In theory, I can go to the Apple store and fix this, but it's going to cost like so much money to do the battery replacement, and that's not going to cover the port because the port's out of warranty or whatever. I don't know. But I'm just hoping that can last another like 3 months or so till September.
Yep. No, side tangent. I will say that saltwater. So this is actually my second 13 Pro because saltwater is bad for these phones. Like I dip this phone in like, regular water, like pool water all the time, just regular water. I don't mind going into the river with this thing, but salt water, like these things do not like that. So I would highly recommend, staying away from the salt. And stuff like that.
It probably is impressive that my phone is almost 3 years old now and it's been in salt water. And we're talking dozens and dozens and dozens of times, like for swims and things like that. And I do clean it with fresh water after every saltwater swim, but sometimes like just by nature of by the time you get back to somewhere, it's not like ideal. So it's had a rough life. But anyways, tangent aside. So we got SRAM Red. We talked to that. Awesome group sets. I would note from a pricing standpoint, people focus on pricing of group sets a lot of times. the group set price by itself doesn't matter except for the handful of people that buy the group set to put on an existing bike somewhere else. Instead, group set pricing for bikes is almost always built into the OEM cost of the bike, meaning that the price, that the upsell cost that you pay as a consumer is because the vast majority of these group sets are sold on a brand new bike that you go out and buy, and you don't really notice the price difference within that same price level, right? Meaning that, if you're looking at Di2 Dura Ace versus SRAM, Red AXS, it's all in that same bucket. Now, if you wanted to go out and equip an older bike that you have with this new group set, then yeah, that's going to hurt a lot.
Yeah.
And frankly, again, to our conversation before, I'd struggle to think it's worth it unless you really want those weight savings.
Yep, exactly. But, I think that, again, if you have the funds, and if I had unlimited funds to go out and refresh a group set every single year, I would, I'd definitely do that. So yeah, more power to you. So I think we had two different topics left, but I think we're going to have to save one of those topics for the next episode, because looking at the timer, we're running a little bit over at this point. So let's save the polar news for the next episode. And talking about pricing, let's talk about the internet fire of the last 2 weeks, which is the Zwift price increase. So they increased their price from $15 a month to $20 a month, and the internet exploded. Yeah. So what were your thoughts about the increase?
So for context, Zwift has not increased prices in 7 years. Like, that's a very factual statement. And so in the last time they did, they gave more notice. Last time they did it, they gave like a year notice or something silly. It was a long time. This time they gave basically month notice, and there wasn't an opportunity to jump in on, the old pricing before the new pricing, whatever. That's sort of there's very few other companies that allow like you to, once they announce pricing, to jump in ahead of time. But so there's that factor. Some people I think UK people had effectively a price increase when they changed the way they bill different countries a few years back ago. So it used to be that it was billed on US dollars, and they switched to local currencies for certain countries. So some people have quibbled with the 7-year statement from Zwift because they got an effective price increase at some point over the last 7 years. But the base price, I think you have to pick a country, right? In this case, the base price has not increased in 7 years. In this case, it increased effectively $5 a month, or I guess less if you do it on an annual basis. And there's a reality to them having to increase prices to eventually become profitable. And we've talked about in the past, like, no one is coming in to buy Zwift and bail out all those investors at the end of the day, right? At this point, that ship has sailed, right? No one's going to come in and have a billion or $2 billion valuation on Zwift. That ship was like a 2020, 2021 ship. So now Zwift has to focus on making money like a traditional company, and being profitable like a traditional company. And this is going towards that. I would note that it was interesting to me that I saw some people that are upset that said it was a dumb move for Zwift to announce this at the end of the Northern Hemisphere spring season. They should have done it in the fall. And I'm like, they made you happy, right? If they wanted to do it in the fall, they would have been like taking the knife and twisting, right? In this case, they said, we'll do it in the summer, knowing people are going to cancel, but knowing they're probably going to come back in the fall. Like, this was a calculated move. This wasn't a dumb business move. This was a let's make less people upset sort of move. For me personally, I get more than my money is worth out of Zwift a month, right? I think about, how much I spend on other things related to cycling, and $5 related to everything else is not a big deal. I understand it's not everyone's position. I'm lucky in that respect. But that's something that, I think this is a fair price increase based on what we get out of the product. They have delivered a lot of updates. Not every update's going to be for every person, right? Like the whole new group FTP thing they just announced yesterday. I have no desire to do an FTP test and then B, to do it with a bunch of other people. Like, that's not for my cup of tea, but I appreciate that there are lots of other features out there for lots of other people.
I think probably the biggest kickback is probably coming from the fact that they did do a huge jump, 33% jump, which is really, really big. However, again, it's like, we're talking about $5 more. I guess, again, there's kind of the optics behind, or the perspective of how you want to look at this price increase, but $20 a month in terms of again, like you and I, we get a lot of use out of Zwift, and I have no problem. And by the way, I don't get a free Zwift membership or anything like that. Like
Same here as well. I pay, my wife pays, like we all pay our own Zwift subs.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that is so incredibly worth it to me. And, this is just my opinion, but I feel it was undervalued at $15. I think you got a lot of value for $15, and I have no issue paying $20 a month, considering how it allows me to pass the time so much easier while riding inside, which is something that I'm going to do already. I think there are obviously other alternatives out there, and I bet a lot of people are looking at those alternatives at this point, but there's obviously some things that can't be replicated either, such as realistically, the social aspects. Like there is no other platform out there where you can get those social aspects. So I think they probably could have appeased a lot more people if they did more incremental increases, and maybe they'll do that in the future whenever they have to do that again. Just because I think that was
the other complaint. Someone was like, so I heard someone say, and I haven't done the math on it. They're like, I wish they just would have increased it $1 per year for the last 7 years as opposed to $5 at once. And I'm like, I don't know if that. I have not done the math on that. I'm going to guess that you would have paid more money though over the last 7 years if they had done that each year than you would have just doing it now. But I don't begrudge them for increasing the price. I think there's things they probably could have done that would have made sense to clarify, like up front on some of that stuff, to maybe give a little more notice, etc. I think, if they had said, hey, this is effective on September 1st, right? Then I think people would have been like, okay, that makes sense for the fall season, but giving us notice now, like, whatever. I think that might have smoothed that over a little bit. So I would disagree slightly on how they executed some of that, but it's been 7 years, right? Like, it's hard to argue with any company that waits 7 years between price increases with all the other things going on out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for context too, like this is going to be the same price as Trainer Road now per month at $20 a month. So, I think that it's pretty well aligned, but again, it was probably just the optics of that big of an increase, over time. So, but yeah, so I don't know. Lots of interesting things come, and I don't know. I think at the same time too, Zwift obviously just announced that pretty massive amount of layoffs. What was that, like 2-3 months ago or so?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so
early year, yeah.
Yeah, and I know from numerous good sources that they're running very lean at this point. So it's very much one of those things where if they're running lean, does that mean less features coming out? So if we're paying more, does that mean that they can actually start to look into building out more features more often? So there's definitely a balance there for everyone. So it's like we could keep it cheap, but maybe the company doesn't go anywhere. So. Yeah.
And to be clear, Zwift, even their CEO, I wrote a post about this more than a year ago, talked very openly on, I think it was CNBC or something like that, about, that price, the current pricing was not sustainable, was his exact words, long term. Like, this should not have been a surprise to anyone. As much as all of us hate to pay more money, I think either Des or I are like, yay, we got to pay more than $5 more a month, right? This shouldn't have been a surprise, and I don't think it's unfair in the grand scheme of things. Now, there are free options out there. Certainly, there are some that are really cheap and some that are free and so on. I'm going to be doing a bit of a deeper dive into Indie Velo, one of the free ones that has a lot of very close relationships with Zwift, like behind the scenes, some people work for both companies at once, which is really interesting, and really fascinating stuff there. They just announced yesterday Apple TV support, so I've been riding with that as well, so that's super cool. And so more to come on that. There are definitely options out there that are totally free that, as Des mentioned, don't necessarily have as deep of a social element, but may have a lot of the components of Zwift that you're looking for in the event that you can't make that from a budget standpoint work.
Yep, totally. Yeah, and I think that actually kind of brings up what we're going to be talking about in the next episode. So we're going to be talking about Indie Velo, as well as quite a few other things. It depends on when we actually get around to filming the next episode, but I would say that things are getting to be pretty spicy, or it's building up that heat level for sure for the summer.
Yeah, this is going to be a hot summer. like from a product standpoint, things are going to be, it's going to be a very sustained burn, I would say. Right. It's not, I feel like some summers has been like really back half heavy, and this will certainly be back half heavy as well. But like looking at what's coming up on the release radar, there is a very constant drip, more like rain shower times throughout the summer of things that it's, I'm looking forward to this. It should be a good summer.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So that's going to do it for this week's episode. We will defer some of the polar talk to the next episode. Any last words for this round?
No, I think we're good. We got it all covered this time. So
all right.
Thanks for listening to the FitFile podcast. And as a reminder, you can find us on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, as well as Spotify, and also directly on dcrainmaker.com/podcast for the direct feed links right there as well.
All right, cool. And we'll see you next time.